Artistic genius? Or overindulgent trash? Let's take a look. Okay, everybody, today we're going all the way back to 1976 to look at a motion picture that, frankly, nobody asked me to review. It's probably going to cost me a few subscribers, and most of you won't watch. But we are talking about The Man Who Fell to Earth. Before we go any further, before we dig into this gem anymore, once again, and as always, to the trailer.
Are you the first?
The first what? Visitor? I've always been visited.
Nothing you have seen or heard about David Bowie will prepare you for the impact of his first dramatic performance in The Man Who Fell to Earth. This is another dimension of David Bowie, one of the few true originals of our time.
You're really a freak. I don't mean that unkindly. I like freaks.
Is this a weapon?
A weapon?
It's too small for interplanetary travel.
Assume that it's a weapon. If I stay here, I shall die.
Take me with you. I'll see you don't die.
I can't stay.
You're an alien!
I think you know too much about me.
Where are you taking me? He's just like everybody else. He's a fake.
Please don't hurt me. You don't understand.
You might be able to save him.
Mary Lou,
Save him
help me.
from what?
No!
No! Tommy, I love you!
The Man Who Fell to Earth is a powerful love story, a cosmic mystery, a spectacular fantasy, a shocking, mind-stretching experience in sight, in space, and sense.
Okay, this motion picture was directed by Nicolas Roeg, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. Let's take a look at it and run the numbers. We're talking about he did Castaway, he did Cold Heaven, and The Witches, and Don't Look Now, and Performance, and Eureka, and Two Deaths, and one of the greatest TV movies of all time, Full Body Massage with Mimi Rogers. Look it up. I say no more. Starring as Newton, the one and only David Bowie, formerly Davy Jones. Is what it is. Let's run the numbers. We're talking about he was in The Hunger. He was in Labyrinth and Basquiat and Absolute Beginners and Into the Night and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence and The Prestige and Zoolander and Just Gigolo and The Last Temptation of Christ. So yes, Bowie was actually in a lot of movies. He wasn't just a rock star. One of my top 20 favorites to be sure. He was also an actor and was around and on the scene. There you go. Playing Bryce, the one and only Rip Torn. What? Yes. Let's run the numbers. He was in Coma. He was in the Men in Black movies and The Beastmaster and Cross Creek and City Heat and Beer and Beyond the Law and The Insider and Wonder Boys and Dodgeball and of course more TV than I could ever imagine. You all know who Rip Torn is. Let's knock off the shit and just keep moving. Playing Mary Lou, the one and only Candy Clark. Let's face reality. Most of you are going to know her from American Graffiti, but she was in some other stuff. We're talking Blue Thunder. We're talking about Amityville 3D and Zodiac and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and TV shows. You know, Magnum P.I., Criminal Minds, Saint Elsewhere. So out and about on the scene for quite some time. She's still out there going, so hey, is what it is. Let's keep rolling. Playing Farnsworth, Buck Henry. Yeah, you probably remember his face if you remember the 70s at all. Let's do this thing. Of course he was on Saturday Night Live, but he was also in movies like Gloria, and Heaven Can Wait, and Catch-22, and Eating Raoul, and even Cowgirls Get the Blues, and other TV shows, not just Saturday Night Live, but Falcon Crest, and 30 Rock, and Hot in Cleveland. So out and about and on the scene, there you go. Okay, everybody, we're going to do this in 90 seconds or less. And I'm really going to try to keep it to that. Just keep it short, keep it fast, keep it entertaining, keep it moving, and so we can get on to the summation part. And really, basically, because this movie is so all over the place with so much going on, to try to describe it in any meaningful way without you actually watching it is kind of weird and pointless. So let's just kick it off. The movie starts out, you see this like spaceship or whatever the hell it is, jet rocketing through the sky, and it's approaching Earth, and it slams into a lake in the middle of New Mexico. Next thing you know, there's this guy, David Bowie, and he's kind of wandering around this town a little bit, lost, a little bit just out of place. It is what it is, until he goes into a store and he trades in a wedding ring for some money, which later you find out he's got about 100 wedding rings and he just trades them in for money all over the place, raising cash. I don't know. Go figure. Next thing you know, he goes and sees a patent attorney and he says, hey, I got 9 patents here to kind of make some money off of. You want to represent me, do the whole thing, whatever, take it as it is. This guy says, you're going to have like $300 million in no time just from these patents. This isn't crazy. So he goes out and he creates this new company that can do things like Polaroid, you know what I mean? Instant film, this, that, and the other. Is what it is. Meanwhile, in the back, in the scenes, taken far away, there's this guy Bryce. He's a college professor, and his biggest pastime is banging every student within 150 meters of him. Yeah, really upstanding guy. Well, he's bored of doing that, even though he does it a lot. And he says, I want to go find this guy. I want to work for him. He's bold, he's innovative. I want to go for his company. And, well, he applies and he quits the college. Take that for what it is. Meanwhile, you have this girl, Mary Lou. She's working at a hotel that David Bowie goes and checks into. Well, he's got motion sickness. I know he can travel through the cosmos, but he apparently can't handle elevators or long car rides or whatever it is. Is what it is. He passes out, gets a bloody nose, falls apart, and she picks him up and carries him to his room. Pardon me. Next thing you know, they become best buddies. She's catering to him. She's taking care of him. She's bringing him massive amounts of television sets and gets him addicted to drinking gin. Hey, take it for what it's worth. She finds out he's married. She doesn't really care. She kind of digs him, and the relationship takes off from there. Meanwhile, Farnsworth hires that guy Bryce, who's really interested in working for the company, and they fly him out, and he's living at a lake across from David Bowie and Mary Lou, who are now living at a lake. And he's like, oh great, this is going to be the great opportunity of a lifetime. I'm going to go work for the great and powerful head of World Entertainment, whatever the fuck the company's name is. I can't remember. It doesn't really make a difference. Anyway, he goes there and he meets him. He figures out this guy's kind of weird. There's something going on with this dude. He's got some suspicions. Well, Bowie says to him, hey, I'm really interested in some other things. I'm really interested in energy and transfer of energy and interplanetary travel and all this other kind of stuff. Will you help me? Bryce goes, yeah, sure, but he knows something ain't right. So he takes an X-ray camera and hides it, and he gets pictures of this guy's whatever. And he goes, holy shit, this guy is an alien, to which David Bowie kind of cops to it later. He says, well, yeah, I am. Hey, take it for what it's worth. It is what it is. Meanwhile, Mary Lou, she's really getting into him. She's like, I love you, I love you, I love you. We have to go to a better place. We have to fall in love more. I need you more. And he's like, I gotta leave. And she's like, no, you can't. And he's like, I gotta leave. She's like, no, you can't. And he says, well, this is why. And he shows her that he is an alien. Tickets for what it's worth. She doesn't handle it well. In the backdrop, there's all these people, government people, other agency people, trying to get in to this industry, this corporation. And they're like, no, we don't want you as part of this corporation. Government doesn't like that. Take it for what it's worth. Next thing you know, the almighty Bowie is sitting there saying the only way I can get home to my planet, because the whole reason he's here is to get water somehow back to his planet so that his family doesn't die on this desolate desert of a planet, is to build a spaceship to go home. Not really to transfer the water there, which was the whole point of this, but we'll get to all that shit later. Anyway, just about as he's ready to become this media superstar and this sensation and this genius who always hid from the public and now is out in front of everybody, he gets kidnapped by the government. Woo! And they take him and they experiment on him and run tests on him for apparently decades. And I mean decades. And then he's just about had it. He's just an old drunk living in this room. Well, actually, he hasn't aged at all. He hasn't changed. But everybody else around him's gotten old. Take it for what it's worth. Next thing you know, Mary Lou comes and visits him. She's with Bryce now. It is what it is. Take it for what it's worth. But she still kind of loves David Bowie. They have sex. They play ping pong. They realize they don't really love each other anymore. She leaves, and for some reason, after all this time, decades have passed, David Bowie just tries the front door and walks right out. Take it for what it's worth. So he leaves. He realizes he can't get back home, but he wants to send a message to his wife, who he was trying to get water to because she was going to die, by making a record. And he becomes a pop star. And he says, I'm going to make a record called The Visitor, and I'm going to let my wife hear it through the cosmos, even though she should be dead by now. Whatever. That's basically the motion picture. It is what it is. Yeah. Okay, everybody. Does The Man Who Fell to Earth work? Well, it depends on what you're looking for. As a movie that makes any kind of logical sense or has a plot that develops and turns into something meaningful, absolutely not. There's more plot holes, more flaws, and I'm going to get to all of this. Just give me a moment. Than you could humanly imagine. But if you want to watch something weird, offbeat, definitely off the beaten path, something that hadn't really been tried before, and something that was really, really, really out of the mainstream, then this might be the flick for you. Let's get the big three out of the way. First off, the directing. It's alright. I wouldn't call it great. There's times it looks good. There's great scenery sometimes of New Mexico and some good shots of Bowie and stuff. And then there's other times where it just feels awkward and weird. And then there's times where I swear to God they just throw in like stock footage of shit just to pad it out. It's kind of odd. So the directing, the writing. The dialogue is just weird and nothing connects. The story is weird and nothing connects. So from a dialogue point of view, the writing is alright. It's not too bad. It's passable. From a storyline point of view, the writing is just, we'll get there. The acting. The acting is actually fairly solid. There's a few points where, Bowie comes off as a little bit wooden. And there's a few points where you're just like, okay, this might not really be gelling with me. But overall, playing that kind of a role, which wasn't that far removed from himself at the time, he actually does an effective job. Rip Torn is really good. Candy Clark is really good. So everybody actually does a good, solid acting performance in this thing and delivers. On that note, ain't that many complaints. Okay, back to the fact of, does this motion picture work or not? Let's do the good before we get to the bad. The motion picture does create a vibe. It's interesting to watch. It is. Even though most of the time you're like, I have no idea what the hell is going on here, and this makes no sense. It is kind of interesting to watch. It does have a feeling and a vibe. So, within that realm, that's a success. As I mentioned before, the acting is solid and gets you from point A to point B, even if point A and point B have nothing to do with each other. But the acting is decent, and you have fun time watching the actors do their jobs. So, that's a success. And like mentioned before, there is decent scenery in this motion picture, and there is decent shots. So from a visual perspective, there is enough to keep your eyes and your mind focused on the screen and the camera through most of the motion picture. And hey, man, that's a success. And for trying to create and do something that hasn't really been done before and give you a look and a theatrical experience that is really different than anything you might have seen before, they really kind of did achieve that. You know what I mean? For better or for worse, it is what they tried to do. So that's a success. But on to the other side of the coin. There is a lot really, really wrong with this motion picture. Let's be honest. You know I always talk about pacing. Pacing is king in any motion picture. This motion picture continuously feels too long. Especially if you watch the real cut, not the 2-hour version that they truncated it to in the United States, but the 2-hour and 20-minute version that they released in the UK and in the rest of the globe. This motion picture feels very long. It feels like it should end about a half hour before it does, which would lead you to believe that the American version is the better version. But oddly, no. I wouldn't say that. I say you should still watch the regular version, the 2 hour and 20-minute version, even though it feels longer, even though it goes on for quite some time, just to get the full experience. But in that full experience is where the problem lies. There are so many storylines and so many plot twists and plot holes where they don't feel like there's any resolution. By way of example, you watch this thing for 2 hours and 20 minutes. You're watching it. You're going on, and all you walk away from it is filled with questions and filled with a sense of, well, that never got answered. That never got resolved. What happened here? I don't understand what happened there. Why didn't we get some kind of a closure to this? I don't get this. So for a movie that runs actually too long, you would think you would have all the loose ends tied up. But ironically, none of them are tied up. You feel like, what happened here? Because it's so filled with plot holes and storylines that get created and never finished, you just don't know where to go. By way of example, everything that you think that's going on in David Bowie world apparently doesn't really need to be wrapped up. By way of example, his planet is dying. He needs to get water back to his planet. So he comes to Earth, a water planet, to figure out how to get the water back to his planet before his wife and his children die, who you continuously see him thinking about and them dying and all this other kind of shit taking place back on his homeworld. Yet he's here for a long time. And then when he finally figures out a way to do space travel to get back home, none of it has to do with water or getting it back to his planet. So you're like, well, that's kind of weird. I don't understand. Isn't he in a rush to get home? He's telling Candy Clark he's got to get home or he's going to die. But through the course of the movie, he's still here for decades more. And then writes an album to his wife, who's back living on fucking Mongo or wherever she is, so she can hear this story when it reaches her at radio wave speed in a millennium of light years, so she can hear the message from him. Well, it's like, well, she must not be in danger of dying if you're writing an album for her to hear in like 200 light years. What is going on? Another thing that just glaringly jumps out at you is the whole scene at the end when he escapes from the place that they've had him in for 20 years. Everybody else is aged. Candy Clark is old. Rip Torn's old. And they've aged by decades. Not a couple of years. They've aged by decades. And he escapes because his prison is in the top of this motel or back of it, wherever the fuck it is. And when he escapes, everything still looks just like the day he went in. They didn't even try to like futurize it up. The lobby looks like the lobby he went into when they, whatever they did to him. The world he steps out into kind of looks like the world that he went in on. Nothing makes any sense. And despite the fact that he was this world famous multi-billionaire who was going to build a space probe and go out into space and do all this shit, he's apparently just hanging out in bars and writing albums and making music and becomes a rock star and hasn't aged a bit, and nobody's questioning this. What? None of it makes any sense. Throw in also the fact that the musical score and the music used in this is often misplaced. Often either too loud or doesn't really fit the scene. It just seems off-put. So from a technical point of view, on top of everything else, this motion picture just, do with it what you will. And finally, keep in mind, this might be a sci-fi movie. This might be something that, you know, is like weird and avant-garde and all this other kind of shit. But do not, by any stretch of the imagination, ever put this on when the kids are at home. There is some crazy shit going on in this motion picture. There is sex scenes and nudity in this thing where you're just like, what the fuck? How did they almost get away with this? How did this thing not fall into almost rated X category? There's moments. That's all I'm going to say. There's moments where you're just like, damn, what are they doing? What are they doing? So this is a late night movie. Everybody goes to bed, or everybody's out of the house. You're just going to put it on and watch it and take it all in and go, what is taking place? Actually, they went so deep into all the nudity and all that kind of stuff. There is actually a body double for when they fool around later in the movie and David Bowie is with Candy Clark. And you're just like, wait a minute. he's supposed to be fooling around with her now, but now she's like 30 years older. He looks the same, and she's older. And you can tell they put an older woman as a body double in there, so when you see the nudity jumping around, you're like, one, that's obviously not Candy Clark. And two, where'd they get this 60-year-old woman? I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. So all in all, what do we take away from this? If you're in the mood to step outside the normal motion picture experience box, then you might get a kick out of this motion picture. If you want to watch something that's strange and bizarre, but strangely interesting and still somewhat fun to watch, you might like this movie. If you just want to see David Bowie in something, because you're like, hey, I'm a David Bowie fan, you know what I mean? You know, fucking Let's Dance and goddamn Major Tom, then you're there. And you'll have some fun with this motion picture. But if you're looking for something that tells a cohesive story with any version of logic, or, damn, just common sense, then this is not the motion picture for you in any stretch of the way or the imagination. It just will not give you what you're looking for. There's no resolution, there's no logic, there's no common sense. There is nothing that even adds up in those realms. This is an art house flick with an art house performer from back in the day, and you're just going to get bashed over the head with that. Don't look for something that's logical. Okay, everybody, be good. Take care. Stay out of trouble. Be kind to a stranger. Be there for a friend. But most of all, never, and I mean never, take any bullshit from anybody. See y'all soon.